Sadam, yogis and yoginis. Hello and welcome back to one more part in this mantra course. And the last one we were exploring the sounds of ch and j. And today we're going to go in depth into the t and the d and the n. We have a nice journey ahead of us, so let's get ready for that. There was one thing I forgot to mention about the ch and the j. I wanted to point out that j, like the j of jazz, yeah, like jazzing, making music jazz, yeah, is softer and easier than the ch. For example, if you're making music and you have a jam session, right, with some friends, and you're just playing and just enjoying music, that's much softer. Jamming, you're just jamming. It's different from teaching a music class. Teaching, ch, implies, we will see that the t implies a direction and ch implies an effort. So you have to move in an effort in a certain direction. We will see about the t in a moment, but this ch implies some effort. So just, jamming along and that's soft and easy, and teaching, that would be with some effort. You can see the same example, for example, jogging. Jogging is just going along, running softly, but with no much effort initially, It's different from marching. Yeah, what soldiers would be marching. That's considerably more effort, yeah? Marching than jogging, teaching than jamming. So you can see the difference in the different sounds from the ch to the j, the voice and the unvoiced one. So, well, unvoiced and voiced, let's say. So let's go to the T and the D. We will see something similar as well happening with them. Remember that the T and the D, we are now, let's see that diagram again. Excuse me. We are now entering into the realm of the heart. And the T and the D, remember there is the cerebral and then there's the dental. So depending on how we pronounce these sounds, they can go down to the navel. So going down from the heart and crossing the solar plexus and going down. That's the movement of the TT. Tatha dadhana, tatha dadhana. Tatha dadhana, tatha dadhana. So these are the sounds that we're going to be concentrated upon right now. And we're going to, as usual, carry on with our lovely little book of Gods in the Word. And I will put the link in the description below, as usual. And so let us go straight away with the sound. Well, let's start with the N, because the N will be easier. And then we will go to the T and the D. The N should be shorter. I don't want to talk too much about the N. So it says that the N, look at these things: narrowing, nearer, nigh, no, not, never, now, new, and next. I think all of these words relate to something which is when. When? Well, it is near. The moment is near. Yeah, when? Never. When? Now. When? It's coming next. So it's all about when. Yeah, she doesn't specifically say it, Margaret Magnus, but there is an implicit aspect of when. And when, it is a very intimately, it's a question that is intimately asked to the heart. When will you be ready to do something? You have to be, the heart has to be ready to do that thing, and only you can choose when to do that, when. It's a very different question from why, which engages the intellect. And we were talking the last part of the course about the difference between making a decision from the intellect or making a choice from the heart. So the head wants to ask why. And then there's other questions like what and how, but when, it's a matter of the heart. When you are ready, you will commit. When you are ready, you will trust. When you are ready, you will have faith. When the moment is right, you will choose to do that thing, right? And when is about now as well, which brings you to the present. And you cannot be in the present without breathing consciously, right? Breathing consciously is when you, whoa, I'm here right now. So when is a matter of the heart. So suddenly it knows, like the other dentals, N is aligned with a special place We will see what that means when we go into the dentals like the T and the D. It says that line gets closer and closer to something until it is infinitely close. So N is a limiting process. In the initial position, or so at the beginning of the word, N is small and nubby, like nose. When you take the nose, you can see this concept of the line, yeah? The line to a special point, yeah? This is where, here we inhale. So there is a line and there is a point where you inhale. So in the beginning, the N is a small and nubby, nose, knees, nipples, notches, yeah? And in the final position, it means often painful or injurious, painful or mean. I was just contemplating the word Naam and Man, yeah? The N being at the beginning and the N being at the end, and how there is this Naam is identity, and identity, it's like who we truly are. It's not all these things that we pretend to be and all these ideas, preconceived ideas about who I am and how I show myself to the world, be it an engineer, a teacher, or a nurse, or whatever you are, a brother, a mother, a sister. Those are just layers of my personality and masks that I put myself to show myself to the world. But in the essence, we are very, very, taking away all these layers like the onion, right? You get to the core, and the core is very small. So the N being small and concrete and precise, yeah? So that's Naam, my true identity, yeah? Identity, Naam. And it begins from there, Naam. So it radiates from that N, yeah? The M elongating. The M doesn't stop the sound, Naam. So it's like from that N that we radiate. Different from Man, which gets close, and it's talking about mean and painful and injurious. And let's remember, man, the word man means mind, yeah, in Sanskrit. So the mind can be mean, the mind can be painful, the mind can be injurious, yeah. So we need to relate to the mind, and we need to clear the mind. The mind is critical, and we talk about this in the very word mantra, right? And there is the different aspects of our intellect and our soul, but we don't call it jivatra, right? We are not trying to go across the soul. We're trying to cross the mind, yeah? Tra as traversing, right? So it's about the mind. We need to deal with the mind, because otherwise the mind can be mean. Mind can be mean, you see? So that's very interesting in the sound of the N, related to the sound of the N. Let's go now to the sound of the T. And we have quite a bit of things to talk about and to touch upon. Yeah, we have to T, tuck and touch. So T expresses directedness towards an endpoint, generally along a linear track, but without an indication as to whether the goal is actually reached. Okay? So this is similar to the N we were seeing. T cares only about the process. So from T we have a lot about the travel, the training, anticipation, nervousness, and tones, timbres, tendencies. Okay, so T is about a traveling, like a moving. A lot of the words of T is moving in a certain line towards a certain end, even if you don't necessarily get to the end, but you are moving along a certain line. P and B, by contrast, we will see them in another moment. They hit everything unequivocally on the head. So they are much more on the head. But the T is more in a certain line. In its wilder hours, T's directness takes the form of temper and tyranny. Yeah, if you set up a line and the things have to be aligned with this line, that could be too much. That's difficult to see in relationship to the heart, because we are talking about entering into the heart and going down. So the heart is the center for empathy. And I can imagine that when you have, remember, the heart has the sense of destiny as well. We were talking about this the last part of this course. And if you have a sense of destiny, of where we have to go, and then you establish that direction, that taken in an unempathic way, that could turn into tyranny, right? So, and the major prefixes are tele and trans. yeah, implying movement as well. And words like to, until, toward, implying movement. A lot of them imply movement. Just close to half of the T words also involve touching or tapping with the purpose of directing or redirecting attention or an action. Touching or tapping. Well, now that's if you remember in the last video I was talking about how the five senses start from the fifth chakra down. As we, in this ladder of subtlety, I was talking about how manifestation begins to be perceived through the five senses after the fifth chakra, which is associated to hearing, yeah, sound and hearing. And in the fourth, this is touch. And actually, the hands are an extension of our heart. And every time we do any mudra, any meditation, moving the arms, we are having an effect on the heart because the arms and the hands are an extension of the heart. Now, the sense that is associated to the hands is touching, touch. So that's going to be relevant to this sound of the T. So this touching or tapping to redirect attention or action, you can see it in words like take, tackle, trap, trip, tack, tie, tether, yeah, all these ones. So I was making a note here, touch as the fourth sense, which fourth sense, the sense of touch, can also be in the most negative way when you are not applying this empathy. In the most karmic way, that T becomes a tyranny. You remember we were talking about distemper and tyranny, which is when you manipulate, the use of hands to manipulate some other people, and then you become tyrannical. So there is a dharmic and a karmic aspect of every sound. We haven't explored it in depth with every sound before, but we start to be, now it's so difficult to go in depth into this concept of language and meaning that we have been very slowly getting deeper into it. Now, as we become more comfortable with exploration of meaning on sounds, we can start to see the bigger picture and put the pieces together as the different letters get together, right? So, as I was mentioning right now, that every sound will have a karmic and a dharmic aspect to it, and it would be very interesting to explore every sound by itself, but sounds are related, they are not isolated. And so it is best if we see it in action through the words themselves. So three sounds that are very often joined together is STR. And STR means straight, something straight. And many STR words have this concept of straight in many languages. Sorry for my writing if you don't understand it very well, but I'm reading it anyway. So hopefully you hear it. So there is, now what I'm writing here, I mentioned the other day that Margaret Magnus has, this is like a side work of her PhD thesis, which is like an incredible job what she has done there. And I didn't want to go too deep into it because we could take years studying it. But for today's video, I researched it a little bit. I was reading sections of her PhD, and I wanted to put things together here. So she explores how STR means straight in many different languages, and she gives a lot of examples like English, Albanian, Catalan, German, Greek, Hindi, Indonesian, Norwegian, Russian. And I put here dots because she goes on and on. So there's lots of examples of words in different language which contain this junction of sounds like STR and meaning straight. In some languages, there may be vowels in between. For example, in Spanish, we can see the word estirado, and that means stretched. And the ST and R have vowels in between. That's going to affect a little bit the meaning, but the idea of, remember, the consonants give the form and the vowels give the life and the soul. So the consonants are the ones which give the shape of the meaning. So the form of the meaning in this case being straight. Estirado would be stretched, which is a kind of straightness. So in English particularly, if we see STR in straight, strand, straw, stream, string, and so many more. In her PhD, she has like a full list of them, like so many words. which is overwhelming and at the same time incredibly touching that all these sounds are associated to all these meanings. All these sounds are associated to the same meaning. All these words with this sound STR has this very same meaning. That's quite incredible. Now, if we remove from STR, we just take the T and the R, there's going to be a slight difference, but it's also the T keeps on talking about this straightness. And you can see it in linear paths like street, steer, track, trail, route. Now, route is RT, is not TR, yeah? Like a trait or a track. And that's going to change. Changing the order is going to change. We will see about this in a moment. But another we can see in TR is another meaning is contact. You remember we talked about the sense of touch. In contact we can have strike, stroke, and treat, print, yeah, like a fingerprint. So in this case, print being again RT instead of TR. So we are seeing now what happens when we combine sounds. What are we combining here? T and R. I don't know how deeply we talked about the R when we were talking about the semi-vowels, but the R was the fire of Ram, and fire is the fire of action. So fire, the R means an active dynamic, an energy which is active, yeah? And it could imply also rajasic, yeah? But there is some activity with the R. The T is linear and movement, the R is activity. So putting the T before the R or the R before the T is going to have a different effect. Let's see with words. So the R puts energy into the direction that the T has set up if T is before the R. So for example, if we see in a stream, or we see in a street or steer, right? The R puts action into the T, the direction. So your steering means that you already have a direction you want to go, and then you put energy into that direction. While, for example, route, is not so linear because the movement was already there before you put the line. So you were already moving before you found the line. So route is like you are kind of like looking at the different paths that can take you to a certain place, but you are already moving and like, oh, what's going to be my route to get there? So there is a certain sense of action before you actually put the line and you establish the line that you want to move into. So RT sounds are not necessarily so linear. Sorry. Another example would be roots, for example. The roots is they are already movement. Yeah, the R is in movement. And the T, it has an objective, which is finding water, but not necessarily in a straight line. Yeah, the roots move actually in many different lines. They are not straight. So when we have words with TR, they are generally straight. When we are RT, there is a movement and objective, but not necessarily straight. What happens when a vowel gets in between? This is what I was saying before about with a vowel in between two sounds. Then something gets off balance or rotates. Rotates in the very word of rotation. You can say R-O-T. Again, RT doesn't mean linearity, but also it can have this rotation movement. So for example, torture, turn, terror, torque. They are turning, and they could be like putting somebody off balance. You know, torture is to bring somebody off balance, so they, you know, tell you something that you want to hear, or whatever reason that people may torture for. But it's certainly taking something off balance. Yeah. Now, if we were to combine T, for example, with the N, we were just seeing the N before, a moment ago, especially at the end of words, NT are generally soft and suggested. Like, remember, T is a certain line, so it's pointing to something, but the N is going to make things smoother and softer. The N, remember, at the end of the word was mean, but not at the beginning. That was small. Yeah, there was something small, remember? So like nose and neck, yeah? So in this case, hint is going to be a small hint with the direction of a T, but it's just a small thing. And it's soft. It's a little hint. You don't force anyone. You just give a hint. Yeah. And so you may have tint, faint, scent, or point. And also the word sant, like a saint, would have that concept of smallness. Saints are generally it's the sainthood of somebody is quite evident in their humility, in how small they feel, and yet they have this sense of purpose in life, this direction. So saint would be interesting. Coming from the S sound is fascinating, and I will come in another video to come, not so far away, but it's going to be the sound of the Kundalini energy, of the serpent energy. That's going to be fascinating as well. Well, how is it going so far? Is it interesting? Is it capturing your attention? Is it touching you in some way? Is it transforming some ideas of something that you knew already? How is it touching you? I hope it's having an impact like it has in me. This little book has a lot of, with the T sound, has a lot of words. She makes a good example at the very beginning of the book, and lots of examples of how the T sound implies some sort of movement and traveling, but says no concern about whether the goal is actually reached. So remember, the heart knows the destiny, right? We know the destiny, but the destiny is always so out of reach. Yeah, so we are just moving in that direction. So we see T as going to, as traveling, tourney, train, travel, trip, as a vehicle, tank, tanker, taxi, toboggan, traffic, trailer, as a tent, tarp, tent, tipi, as a ticket, like a ticket. I think tent is not so connected with traveling, but it is a traveling home, in some way. You take a home with you for traveling. You don't take a tent if you're going to be at home, right? Generally. So travelers, trade, if you go by foot, tram, tread, trek, trump. If you're following somebody, like tailing somebody or towing someone from behind, tracing, path, ditch, flow. And when you read all these words, what do they have in common? The letter T and the movement. And so what she's saying that this is like a hypothesis. Okay, so if we associate the letter T to movement, and if we wanted to do the opposite and prove it's not right, let's say, no, actually the letter B implies movement. So you would take all the letter B's, all the words that start with the letter B in the dictionary, and look how many of those would imply movement. She actually did that in her PhD, which is very impressive to see. And then you come out convinced that there's very few words which starts with B and imply movement. But there is a lot of words that start with the sound T and imply movement. And that's how, it's not going to be all of them, of course, but an incredible abundance of words. So there is movement, there is motion. She shows like tilting and tealing and tremor and trembling. And there is motion is like movement, but slightly without the objective necessarily. Then T expressing also fear. Now that's also a very, very interesting one. Tense, terror, tight, tingle, tinge, toot, and trembling, yeah? Twitch, talisman, taboo, tact, tarot, totem, trouble, yeah? All these things which are associated to fear. Now, why is it so interesting? Because fear, it has an immediate impact on your heart. Now remember, we were associating T with traveling and kind of going in a certain direction, but there is another thing, which is when we associate fear to the heart, in the sense that when something scares you, it's taking your air away, right? It's like it takes your air away. That's fear, right? So it touches directly into your heart. So again, some particular meaning, in this case fear, associated with a sound T, and so very much connected to the fourth chakra. Quite incredible. There is other meanings of tea apart from traveling and movement and fear. She goes into trying and taming and teaching and training. There's a few more. I don't want to read the whole book. I would love to, but I don't want to read the whole book, so I'm just pointing things out which are very interesting. I'm not trying to avoid them because I don't see any correlation. There is correlations here, but I want to avoid going in too much, otherwise we'll be like 2 hours in this video. So she also mentions, like, unlike bonding in B, which implies that the force is required, the togetherness of T is formed by trust. And then all parties remain free. So words of trust begin with TR, remember, TR implying action and movement, and tend to end in S or in T, like treaty, truce, trust, or tryst, and in a team, totem, town, trade, tribe, trio, troop. So trust, something, again, that is intimately linked to the heart. Can I trust your heart? Can I honestly, meaning true, can I honestly trust what you are saying? Yeah, can I trust it? Or are you lying? And lying, the lies come from the mind. In Spanish, mente, mind, and mentira. When somebody is lying, you say miente. You see how you hear mente, miente. Yeah, how similar, right? So the lies come from the mind, and the heart knows the truth. So can I trust you? Means, can I feel your heart in what you are saying, in what you are doing? So again, and if it's so, remember that there is a bondness different from the B, which is kind of forcing that bond. There is a togetherness in the trust, which comes from the heart, and it's free. The trust is free. You cannot demanding. You cannot force anyone to trust you. You have to earn it, right? You have to create that empathy, that connection with the other one. And interesting that she says all parties remain free, because freedom is associated to air element. Yeah, the air is free. It goes wherever it wants to go. And the air element is associated to the fourth chakra. Is it a coincidence? No, so many elements are connecting. So many pieces of the puzzle are joining together. And as now everything makes more sense and becomes more clear. So she also talks about tea as tastes. So with all these words that she goes through, all these different categories of movement and vibration and how was that? Traveling, movement, trying, taming, teaching, trusting, and tasting. This small number of topics, concepts, have a 49% of all the words that start with T. So half of the words that start with T can be categorized in these 6 or 7 different categories, which are very much connected, and we see them very much connected to the heart. So interesting. This was something else, how the R in the second position involves a fracturing or a rupture of some kind. So the R, I said it involves action. I mentioned that before, but there is another, when the R is in the second position, the second letter in the word means fracturing. So, for example, in traveling or traversing, you are like cutting across a river, right? Traverse a river or cutting across some terrain. So that's traversing, that's cutting, that's fracturing. And you can see this fracture with the R in the second position in other words, like with the letter D, like dripping, for example, yeah? Like dripping, like it's an interrupted flow. It's not like flowing water, it's like dripping, so interrupted. That would be the R in the second position after the T. So not only the sounds have meaning, and the order whether one is in front of the other or not, but the position in the word, whether it's first position, second, third, and she also looks at the last position or the one before the last. So that implies also a certain meaning. And again, her PhD is so, I'm talking about Margaret Magnus, incredible in detailing all these things for so very many words. We are not interested in going in all those details, but we have seen the T in quite a lot of depth. There's another aspect of the T. Let's talk about talk, which is take and talk. Let's take it. So take is different from a verb like pick up or collect, in that the thing taken doesn't really want to go with the person who takes. Otherwise, we would say, I picked up something. Yeah. But if you take it, it's like something didn't really want to go with you. So that's associated with the T and the K particularly, because remember that the T wants to go somewhere, but the K sound and all sounds which are guttural, we already saw the K and the G, they tend to imply towards myself. Remember in that part of this course when we talked about the difference between om and ong, and the G of ong meant that the sound was going back to us. Now it makes sense. Now that we understand the vibration of G meaning towards myself, we understand how om is expanding and ong is contracting. So the G and the K make this towards myself. So the T implies direction and K means towards myself. The word take is I take towards myself. So I take something, yeah? Now, so she's explaining this here, and she finds how at the beginning of the words, who start with the K, you can find cling, clasp, catch, catch, come, keep, clutch. This is all towards myself, yeah? And at the end of the word, you have similar ones like lock, suck, stick, and pick, yeah? But in these cases, there is a capture, yeah? So in the first case, the capture is what sets the stage for the action of the word. So you are clinging to something or catching something for something. Yeah, you are keeping something for the future, or you are catching a fish. Maybe you want to eat it. We don't encourage eating fishes, but okay, you are catching a fish because you want to eat it, or I don't know, whatever you want to do with the fish, right? And the difference with the latter case, the capture is the punchline. So it's something has been picked, yeah? Or I suck at something, yeah? Or I lock the door. The locking is the objective. The locking is the final result. So the k sound being at the beginning of the word or being at the end is what determines whether it's at the start of the action or at the end of the action. It is really quite sensible, really. When you look at it, it makes sense. So she goes on with several different meanings of the word take, and how we were talking about the thing that you are taking doesn't necessarily want to go there or doesn't know where to go. Like I'll take you there means that the person doesn't know how to get there, or I'll take cover means that there is a danger and the danger wants you to do something else, but you are actually taking cover, which is not where the danger is implying that what you should do. I take off is opposite to the beginning or starting, yeah? So there is a resistance to taking off, yeah? It's different from saying, I'm going to begin doing something. No, I'm going to take off. So there is a resistance to start. And when you see all these meanings of take, you see that there is this resistance, yeah? So, for example, then she goes into talking about the words like talking, and again reflecting in the relationship between T and K, like there is something specific a talker wants to talk about. That's coming from the T. Yeah? So remember, T means direction, the K means towards myself. So I want to talk to you, to me. I want you to connect with me to talk about something, and I have a certain direction I want to talk about. It's not like, hey, should we chat? Let's have a chat. Like there is nothing really to chat about or gossip. No, this is a particular thing that we have an objective. So again, T pointing a certain direction and a straightness, yeah? All right, this is a good way to connect the sounds of te and ki, which we have been already seeing, gutturals and now dentals and cerebrals, and it's becoming more clear. And we have seen a different position. Or the D we haven't seen. Let's take a look at the D sound, because we see the T but not the D, and remember the voiced sounds are slightly different. So D, she says, is a door which divides space into two equal parts. Now dividing implies two already. The sound D of dividing implies two. And that's going to point out towards the second chakra actually. And that's going to be very interesting how the letter D, it's kind of pointing down towards the second chakra. We'll see what happens. It says that set up a gate midstream for an ongoing process, and the stream is often literal. D is a very wet phoneme. I didn't underline this, but it's important. It's a wet phoneme. Wet means water. Fourth chakra is air. Second chakra is water. So as the T is implying a direction, D is also implying a direction, but it's actually pointing down towards the second chakra. So from the fourth to the second chakra, going down to the second. And that implies a lot of things. Let's explore a few of these things. So 5 was the threshold, 4 would be the door. So remember, we are crossing through this threshold, crossing through the filter, then something is coming down. In the last video we saw we are crossing cha-cha-ja-ja-nya. As we come down, then now we are entering, right? So we are entering through the door, like into the heart. The heart has 4 chambers, and the Golden Temple in North India, in the Punjab, you see has 4 doors, and that's because it's like accepting people from the 4 directions of the wind. Remember, the wind is associated to the heart, so the 4 doors in the Golden Temple in the north, south, east, and west, as far as I know, symbolizes that everybody is welcome there. And you can be a Muslim and you are welcome. You can be a Christian, you are welcome. You can be from any religion or from no religion at all, you are welcome there. So there is an opening and a freedom to go in through any of these 4 doors. So that's the heart as well. The heart has 4 chambers. And there is a certain freedom and acceptance and opening and welcoming from the 4 acceptance from the point of the door. So the phoneme of D occurs more frequently at the end of a word than at the beginning. Let's say this in a moment. D is overwhelmingly downward. Right? I mean, we didn't reach here. We were just talking about the water and coming from the T, and we were already intuiting how this is going to go from the air to the water and from the heart down to the second chakra. And she mentions D is overwhelmingly downward. Over half of its words are literally or metaphorically down. Small, soft, depressed, dark, subdued, and dainty. So the heart is in between the lower chakra and the lower chakras and the higher chakra. Sometimes we say the higher triangle and the lower triangle, and the heart is in the middle, right? And the T vibrating in the heart, but the D is actually pointing down to the lower triangle. And what happens is that when something touches us in the heart, how often do we then jump to the second chakra? Meaning, heart are feelings and second chakra are emotions. Yeah, the belly is filled with emotions. And how often something's happened, it touches us, we feel it, produces some feelings which are neutral and uncolored, and immediately we come down, crossing through this point of the solar plexus, which we know is loaded with our traumas from the past, and then we go down to the navel and down into the belly, where all these emotions flutter and flicker. And that when we go down there, it's like allowing something neutral as a feeling become tainted or colored by an emotional reaction. Not all emotions should be reactive. There could be like a pure sense of sadness, which could be fueling my own devotion, like we say emotion to devotion, right? It could be a pure sense of sadness, and that could bring me to prayer and stay in my heart. Sure, but very, very often we feel some sadness and we feel there's something wrong with it, and then we start to react, and then we may even get depressed, or maybe we try to suppress the sadness and the S is starting to come up. But yeah, then we come into some sort of reactions. The feelings of the heart are pure and neutral. The emotions from the belly tend to be corrupted by past memories, and which could be even cellular memory. Yeah, we could have a cellular memory in the body, a memory of being abused, or a memory of maybe violence in your home when you were little, whatever, it's in your cells. And then whatever, there is a big sound outside, any person could just feel the sound in the body, and that's okay. But if you feel it and you had this memory of shouting when you were little, your parents maybe had a lot of arguments, and then that triggers everything, takes your breath away, the heart collapses, the fear of repeating the pattern of the family. And then as the heart closes, the energy goes down and triggers the emotional reaction that comes with that. So the heart sinks down to the belly. And remember something we said already, as we are breathing, we should fall into the heart. We should not let the heart fall. There's a sense of falling into the heart, which is really deeply relaxing, as a difference than collapsing the heart. So feelings turning to emotions, and air becomes water, and as it becomes water, the D, you can hear it in words as drip, drown, don't, dim, diminish, downward, danger, down, dirty. Dirty, yeah, we associate it with something dirty, the water. Dull, dreary, dividing, digging, so on and so forth. And yeah, if the emotions get stuck, like water, when the water gets stuck, it tends to accumulate toxins and becomes dirty. But emotions do not have to be dirty. Emotions, there is a purity to them, and if you can relate to them purely as they are, that fuel, that energy of the second chakra can rise to the fourth, and that's when the passion becomes compassion. That's when the emotion becomes devotion, and that's when all these deep emotions become a fuel. Deep, yeah, D, another D sound, ending in P, which is a very second chakra sound. These deep emotions can become fuel for your devotion. Devotion ending in the T. Now, the phonestem, when it occurs at the end of the word than at the beginning, it can become an obstacle to cross through. So the D at the end of the word is like bound, plot, pound, stride, tread, or wait. Implies there is an obstacle. Remember, the T sound implied a line and an objective where we're going. The D sound at the end means that what is at the end of the line, that's going to be an obstacle we're going to have to cross through. The T at the end implies that there is little resistance, but the D at the end, there is an obstacle. So the T at the end, we can find it in words like rest. Rest is not resistance, it's like rest. But the D at the end, it means bound, tread, yeah, wait. There is a resistance there. And also, so if we remember, for example, let's take this as well. Let's combine also this T and the D now with the sound of the R. We were saying how R implies action, but also R implies breaking apart, like, for example, words like rip, or break, or part, or tear. So when this R breaking aspect combines with the D, the R becomes something vertical going down, maybe even watery, and it's in a broken flow. That's dripping, isn't it? So, or drilling, yeah? When you are drilling something, yeah? D and the R, vertical downward movement and interrupted. It's magical, you know? D, vertical movement, going down, R, broken. And there we have words like dripping and drilling. It's incredible how amazing. It's like sounds have life by themselves. Like Margaret Magnus, when she talks about this, she says that they are like little gods. Yeah, like Zeus is in one of these sounds. And when we use the sounds, they are manifesting, they are becoming real, and they are taking shape, and they are guiding the meaning behind those words. And somehow our process of inventing language actually has been more like discovering the words that best associate to those sounds. And a very intuitive thing that we have done, but we just knew which sounds made sense for that word. And it doesn't make sense to call dripping to something else, to a flow of water going up, because it's not. It's a going downwards feeling because the D is there. Incredible journey. Today, I feel like finally we are putting all these pieces together again, and we are seeing one sound in the first position, in another position, in another position, with another letter, at the other way around, which letter goes first, when we put a vowel in between, and seeing many different examples, everything is starting to make more sense of how language is constructed, but also how deeply aligned with the chakras are, and how deeply aligned with our body, and the psychological and more metaphorical or maybe even metaphysical aspects of the sounds and the different aspects of our body, no? Associating the fourth chakra to freedom, for example, and just what does that mean, and what does that mean to sound? What does it mean to the sound that starts with the letter T? And therefore, words like trust have to imply a freedom. Yeah, you cannot force trust. You cannot force anyone to trust you. I think that by itself already we could take it and start philosophizing and meditating and reflecting upon this, and we could just take a few hours just to brainstorm and meditate on the meaning of trust and the meaning of freedom, for example, yeah? And we could do that with every word and every sound and every different part of ourselves, and therefore also every mantra and the very sounds of the mantras. Like the word mantra, we just saw man being the mind, and tra, T, direction, and R crossing through, right? And cutting. Remember the chopping sound? Like the R ripping something apart and breaking something. Maybe we need to break a little bit of those layers of the mind to cross through them and to access meaning and sound and meaning in a deeper, different way with more depth. Yeah. That's all for me now. I think it's enough. I hope it was of service, this video, and you find it inspiring as usual. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, thank you very much. Naam.